Yes, you. Welcome to the You're Not Getting Any Younger podcast, a podcast for people who want to disrupt their lives for a good reason, to make it count. I'm your host, Jen Glantz, and every week I'll drop a new episode with stories from real people just like you, who woke up one morning and decided to make big changes, starting with small things. We'll cover topics like entrepreneurship, love, failure, and self-care. Hey, you're not getting any younger, so let's make this an adventure. Ready? This week's podcast is brought to you by the firstyearsofmarriage.com, a brand new newsletter about the conversations, problems, and challenges that begin once the honeymoon ends. This is a free newsletter written for you by me, Jen Glantz. It is perfect for anybody who is recently engaged, had a pandemic elopement, or just got married. Hey, if you've been married for a couple of years, for 10 years, 15 years, you might enjoy this newsletter as well. Check it out, thefirstyearsofmarriage.com/welcome, thefirstyearsofmarriage.com/welcome. Hey, any youngers, it's me, your host, Jen Glantz, back with another episode of the You're Not Getting Any Younger podcast. I am back in New York after a couple of weeks on the road. Adam, Goofy, and I road tripped to Chicago for a couple of weeks. On our way to Chicago, we stopped in Pittsburgh, a city I had never been to, I did not know much about, and I absolutely adored. We arrived there in the late afternoon on a Saturday, and we didn't have that much time to explore, but we went to a couple of different neighborhoods. We got dinner, we had just the greatest time there, and it was such a fun city that I would definitely go back to. I would spend a Friday to a Sunday there. There's so much to explore, there's so much going on. And it was great. We had the best time. And then we continued on to Chicago, where we ended up staying for 2 weeks. At first, we were going to stay for 1 week, but we extended the trip and we stayed for 2 weeks. And on the way home, we stopped in Cleveland, which is a city I've been to a couple of times before. And it was great. We didn't have much time there. We got there very late. We left very early to head back home. All in all, the road trip was awesome. We were in the car for a while. I am not somebody who likes to drive. I don't pride myself on being a good driver or somebody who likes to be behind the wheel. So every time I was behind the wheel, I was so anxious the whole time. On the ride home, I was behind the wheel for, I think, 3 hours straight, and I was so tense and just anxious as a driver. I'm just not very confident on the road. I think a lot of that is because, I've been in New York for 10 years. I haven't driven much. And before that, living in Florida, you don't necessarily drive long distances, or at least I didn't. So I'm not super confident on the road. Driving in New York terrifies me, and even driving on highways scares me a little bit. I know this is going to sound hilarious to some of you, but on the highways we were going, when the speed limit was 70 miles an hour, I was so scared to go that fast. I was going 55, pissing a lot of people off. One highway in Ohio was 60 miles an hour, and that was my jam. I was loving that. But then when we went to Pennsylvania and it was 70 miles an hour, oh my goodness, there were so many people flashing their lights at me. I tried to speed up because I wanted to be safe and maintain good speed, but I did not crack 1 mile per hour over 70. If it was 70, I was going 70, okay? That's how timid I am as a driver. The only way I was able to get through that drive was to just blast music, happy music, because it helped me lower my anxiety of being behind the wheel. Anyone feel me on that? Anyone here sort of understand that? If so, send me a DM. Say hello to me on Instagram. I'm at Jen Glantz. Come hang out with us in the secret You're Not Getting Any Younger podcast Facebook group. There is so many awesome people in that group who have your back, who want to meet you, want to talk to you, chat with you, and just have a great community online. Here's something I'm going to ask. You're on your phone or your computer or your iPad or your Apple Watch, hit the subscribe button. Whether you're listening to it on Spotify or Apple, hit the subscribe button. That helps this podcast so much continue on. And while you're at it, since you're already touching your phone, your computer, your Apple Watch, your iPad, your tablet, can you leave us a review? I have a goal of getting 200 reviews on iTunes by the end of the year. We're so close. Please, if you could leave us a review, that would be amazing. And if you do, if you leave us a review, I have a gift for you. I'm going to actually put something in the mail and mail you a gift. So once you left us a review on iTunes, let me know, screenshot it, or just send me an email. I trust you, jenglantz@gmail.com, and I'm going to put a gift in the mail for you along with a thank you note, because that just means so much to me that you would review this podcast. Okay, I have an interesting episode for you today, and this episode is inspired by something that happened to me lately. And this is going to be an episode that's very, very different than any other episode I've ever done, because I'm going to actually ask you to pause the episode about halfway through, do something, and then come back and listen. And why I want to do that is because I'm going to put you through this experiment, and I don't want to give away the ending because the ending is so powerful. So I want you to if you can, if you're up for it, take the challenge of doing what I'm going to ask you to do, and then come back to the episode to listen to the conclusion, because it'll be mind-blowing. Let me explain. I mentioned a couple episodes ago that I am being mentored by this person named James Altiger. He is an entrepreneur, podcaster, author, all of these incredible things. And I'm on a series of his where he mentors me on his podcast. We're starting a bunch of different ideas together, businesses and projects. With him, I started the First Year of Marriage newsletter. I started an Odd Jobs newsletter. I'll link to both of them in the show notes here. And we also just do a bunch of weird challenges and experiments on our calls every week. So a couple of weeks ago, when the call ended, James said to me, hey, before we talk next week, can you make a list of how your life would change if you got $1 million? So he wanted me to make a list of 10 ways my life would change if I had $1 million. I wasn't sure why he was asking me to make this list, but I made the list. And what happened was, when I brought the list to him on our next call, he read the list out loud, and as he was reading it out loud, I interrupted him halfway through and said, this is a setup. You asked me to do this because, and I'm not going to share the ending yet, but there was a reason he asked me to do this. And the list plus the reason brought so much clarity to my life, so much eye-opening moments, so many interesting things. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to make a list of 10 ways your life would change, what you would do with your life if you got $1 million. What would you add? What would you stop doing? What would you change? How would you change it? What are 10 ways you would change your life? You can even pause the episode here and make that list, because what I want you to do is, after you make that list, listen very closely to what that list tells you. So now is a great time to pause this episode, make that list. You can do it in 2 minutes, put 2 minutes on the clock, and just blurt out the 10 ways you would change your life. Okay, if you pause this episode and now you are back, let me tell you what this list actually has the power to tell you. So as I was making my list, I started to realize that even though these are things I would change if I had $1 million, these are also things I could technically do right now. And this is almost became like an excuse list for me, that these are things I'm not doing because I think I need $1 million to do, but really there's so many other reasons I'm not doing them. So I'm actually going to read you my list, and I'm going to share with you sort of what James had to say that made this list really feel like a list of excuses, a list of Jen excuses rather than a list of things I would do with $1 million. So the first thing I said is I would quit some of my side jobs. I do a lot of side work, like freelance work, things like that. I would put that aside. And why I would quit that is because it's so time consuming and I'm sort of burned out from doing that stuff. So if I had $1 million, I would quit those things. Now, when James heard that, his first response was, you can probably quit most of those things now. Sure, you'd make a little bit less money, but there are other ways to make up for that money, which is true. Number 2 on my list was raise my prices for coaching, courses, workshops. I like to keep my prices as affordable as possible so that they are accessible to a lot of people out there. But because of that, I don't make as much money as I could, especially for the value of the coaching and the courses. James's response on that is there's absolutely no reason to not raise your prices because of the value, the expertise, and the professionalism that you are providing. You can do that now, regardless of having $1 million. Number 3 would be to hire some people to help me scale some existing businesses. So I've got so many different projects and businesses going on. I am an entrepreneur with a lot of things. I wish I could hire people to execute some of those ideas, take those things to the next level for me. The truth is, I could probably hire 1 to 2 people now. Based on the businesses I have, the money I'm making, I could afford that, but I don't do that. I would have multiple places to live. So I mentioned this before, but Adam and I spent 2 years living in new cities. Now that we've been back in Brooklyn for over 2 years, I'm definitely getting an itch to want to live in more places. Sure, money would help us be able to do that, but there is other ways that you can live in multiple places. You don't need $1 million. Number 5, take an extended time off to write books. The truth is, I don't need to take time off. I just need to be better at managing time. That's an excuse. Number 6, James laughed at, which was hire a personal trainer or personal chef. I mean, the truth is, you could do both of those things. You can hire a personal trainer. You can make it less expensive by doing small group training. Maybe you don't want to hire a personal chef, but you can hire these meal services that are a little bit more affordable. Number 7, hire a personal assistant. Number 8, invest in businesses, which you can do right now with $5 of an investment, by the way. Number 9, start more projects. And number 10, use the money to think about how I can benefit other people. Okay, so that was my list of things that I would do with $1 million. But the truth is, and I'm sure the things on your list as well, are things you could do right now at some level. You totally could. If you take off this idea that you need more money, you need more time, you need less this, there's a lot of things on that list that you can do now. So I challenge you, whether you made your list or you're making it after you listen to this episode, what are 3 things on that list that you can start doing this month? Maybe you don't have that $1 million, but you sure don't need to be bogged down by these excuses. It was interesting because even as I was making this list, and I spent some time really thinking through this list, there were so many things on here that I didn't need the money to do. I just needed confidence. I needed time management, and I needed to believe that I could do them. So I challenge you when you make your list to pick things that you can start doing now, but to also pick out the excuses that you are sitting on, that you are hugging, that rule your life. Happy to look at your list and push you further. Feel free to email me, jenglantz@gmail.com. Send me a DM at jenglantz, or come post about it in the You're Not Getting Any Younger Facebook group. I'll be back next week with a brand new episode. All my love, Jen Glantz. Hey you! Thank you for listening to the You're Not Getting Any Younger podcast. There are hundreds of thousands of pods out there, so thank you for listening to this one. You can find the show notes for this week's episode up on our website, anyyounger.com. Subscribe, rate, and review the You're Not Getting Any Younger podcast on iTunes so that other ears around the world can listen too. Oh, and join our secret You're Not Getting Any Younger Facebook group, where over 1,000 people are talking about how to disrupt their lives, for a good reason, to make it count. Until next week, all my love, Jen Glantz.